My mother-in-law raised her glass at my birthday party and said, "To the janitor's daughter who managed to marry up." My husband was filming on his phone, laughing so hard he nearly spilled his drink. And then my mom said 3 words that made my mother-in-law go pale. That night was supposed to be special. A joint celebration, my birthday and our wedding anniversary. I'd spent 3 weeks planning every detail. Cozy little restaurant with soft lighting, fresh flowers on the tables, live jazz, good wine. I picked the menu myself, arranged the decorations, coordinated the music. I wanted something intimate, warm, for close friends and family. Yes, his family too. Daniel looked happy. He was making jokes, wrapping his arm around me, topping off everyone's glasses. His mother, Jean, arrived early, dressed in a tailored suit and her signature string of pearls, strutting in like the governor's wife at a fundraiser. She scanned the room like it was a hotel suite she might reject. I'd gotten used to her brand of elegance. In 2 years of marriage, I'd heard it all, from how I held my knife wrong. That's not how it's done in proper households. To the dust she managed to find even after I hired cleaners weekly. According to her, I overfed Daniel, even though he always went back for seconds. She'd show up unannounced, walk through our rooms like a landlord inspecting a rental, and always talk to me with that polished edge. "Elizabeth, sweetheart, it's not criticism, it's just advice. Don't you want him to be happy?" I stayed quiet. For peace. For Daniel. For the illusion of family. So there we were, laughing, eating, toasting. Daniel whispered something sweet in my ear. Guests clapped. Someone brought a bottle of wine with our wedding photo printed on the label. Then Jean stood up. She raised her glass, crystal gold-rimmed, and paused. I knew that pause. This wasn't going to be a regular toast. "I'd like to say a few words," she began, staring at me like I was a puppy who'd gotten mud on her white rug. Everyone knows Daniel's a star. His job, his future, his lovely family. And as a mother, of course, I worried about who would stand beside him. But he chose. She turned to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. He chose the janitor's daughter. And for that, I respect him. Real American spirit, finding value in humble beginnings. It didn't register at first. The room went quiet. My face flushed hot. Someone coughed. Daniel, right next to me, was laughing, actually laughing, and recording it. I didn't move. Didn't speak. But my mom, Sarah, stood up. Calm, steady. "Yes," she said. "I started as a janitor. I mopped hotel floors, cleaned people's homes. And let me tell you something, Jean. Thanks to those floors and those rags, your son eats off porcelain plates now. And you live in a neighborhood you can't afford anymore. You could hear a pin drop. You play at elegance," my mom continued. "But all your so-called wealth, we pay for that. Me, my daughter, her paycheck, my company. Your husband hasn't made a mortgage payment in months. You're living off someone else, Jean. Off the janitor's daughter." Someone dropped a fork. Jean went pale. Daniel froze, phone still in hand. "I'm proud of my daughter," Mom said. "She kept quiet. She respected you. But you forgot one thing. Respect has to be earned." No one gave another toast. Jean got up and left the room like the walls were closing in. Daniel followed her without so much as a glance at me. And me. I stayed seated. No tears. No scene. Just poured another glass of wine. For me and my mother. The party was over. But my freedom had just begun. I met Daniel at a charity gala in a gallery in Portland. He was in a perfect suit, confident, with that dry, almost lazy smile that made you wonder if he'd ever had to struggle a day in his life. He looked like someone who always had everything under control. That's what drew me in, I think. He reached out first. A message the next morning. Dinner plans by that evening. He was polite, attentive, a little old-fashioned. Flowers. Opening car doors. Laughing at my weird jokes. It felt like I'd walked into a grown-up romance novel. Slow, steady, and finally safe. His parents made a good first impression, too. Jean, his mother, was reserved and proper. Not cold, exactly. Just formal. And George, the father, mostly observed, offering the occasional thoughtful comment about travel or the stock market. They had a big house on a hill, hosted brunches, talked about Europe and mutual funds. The whole family looked like they'd stepped out of a retirement brochure labeled Old Money. When Daniel and I announced our engagement, Jean gave me a thin gold bracelet and said, "You'll fit in just fine." It sounded more like a measurement than a compliment, but I brushed it off. Daniel said she just had a particular way. Our wedding was beautiful. We moved into a new house. Everything felt like it was on track. The first few months were blissfully uneventful. And then Jean started showing up. Without calling. She'd arrive on a Sunday morning with some flimsy excuse, just dropping by for coffee, and then wander the house like a health inspector. Opened cabinets, peered into closets, asked questions like, "When's the last time you deep cleaned your oven?" It felt like she was searching for proof I wasn't good enough. I tried to be graceful about it. Daniel would just laugh and say, "That's just how she is. Don't take it personally." Except I did. She started bringing homemade pies, which would have been nice, except each visit turned into a tutorial. On laundry, on grocery shopping, on appropriate attire for a husband's workplace events. Sometimes she'd toss off lines like, "I suppose you weren't raised with certain expectations, with a smile that didn't quite hide the sting. I felt like I was constantly being tested, like I'd passed the entrance exam, but barely. Once I caught her in our bedroom. She said she was looking for a blanket. I told her, politely but firmly, not to go into our room without asking. She acted wounded. Daniel said I was overreacting. That was our first real fight. Over time, it became normal. Her showing up, her passive-aggressive notes about my background. She'd compliment me in a way that always implied I was trying really hard to fit in. I kept hosting dinners, smiling, pretending. I told myself it was just a rocky start, that I could win her over. 6 months after the wedding, their family business tanked. Something to do with failed investments. Details were murky. George transferred the deed to a different name. Jean called it tax planning. But my mom and I knew better. They were broke. They downsized quietly, moved to a smaller place, still put on the same polished act. Nice clothes, well-kept but aging, leased cars, brunch talk about markets and cruises. No one knew their bank accounts were gasping for air. My mom, Sarah, ran a successful cleaning company. She had savings, steady income. She offered to help. I helped too. Between the two of us, we covered a lot: prescriptions, rent, insurance. I sent money to Daniel, and he passed it along to his parents. Jean never said thank you, never acknowledged it, just kept up the charade. Worse, she acted like I owed her something, like I should be grateful to be part of their crumbling empire. She'd say things like, "Not everyone gets accepted by families like ours, dear." I'd nod and bite my tongue, wondering what family she was talking about. One night stuck with me. I had cooked dinner, cleaned the house, invited them over. Jean walked around with a tiny notebook, like she was taking notes. In the kitchen, she told me, "You use such short knives. It's so basic. In proper homes, we use chef's blades." She didn't even try to hide the condescension. Daniel started changing. He got snappier, less patient. He sided with her more and more. When I told him I was overwhelmed, he'd wave it off. "She's just trying to help. You know how she is." He never once defended me. I felt like I was living under a microscope. I loved him. I respected his parents. I wanted it to work. But every visit felt like an exam I couldn't pass. And I kept telling myself it was worth it. That eventually I'd be accepted. That if I kept my head down long enough, Jean would soften. I'd be part of the family. Then, right before that infamous party, Jean pulled me aside and said she had a little surprise. I thought it'd be a gift. A toast. Something awkward but tolerable. I didn't realize the surprise would be public humiliation. Looking back, I see it clearly. Those 2 years weren't a marriage. They were a performance. A test I was never meant to pass. But the curtain's down now. The act is over. And I'll never sit quietly again while someone raises a glass to the janitor's daughter like she's some charity project. Not ever again. I didn't sleep at all after the party. Not a single minute. I didn't cry either. That part of me was dried up long before. Somewhere in those 2 years I spent swallowing every insult, every sideways glance. What I felt now wasn't anger or heartbreak. It was quiet. Deep, echoing quiet. Like something inside me had snapped loose and floated away. At dawn, I sat by the window in my robe, tea cooling in my hands, and watched the sun rise over Seattle rooftops. My phone buzzed nonstop, texts, missed calls, group notifications. Someone had posted a video from the party, Jean's toast. The one where she lifted her glass and said, "To the janitor's daughter who married well." The same one where Daniel, my husband, laughed so hard he had to steady his phone while filming it. In the background, you could hear the dead silence of the room. And then my mom's voice, calm, razor-sharp, and surgical. "Do you know whose money you live on, Jean?" Messages poured in. A few friends sent love. Others asked if it was true. One of Daniel's co-workers posted a story captioned, "When your mom gets wrecked on camera at your wife's birthday." What was supposed to be a quiet dinner with friends had become a viral whisper campaign. Around 10 in the morning, my phone rang again. I picked up without thinking. You serious right now? Daniel. His voice was clipped, pissed. You let her do that. You let your mom humiliate mine like that. She won't leave the house. People are calling. She's sick. And how are you, Daniel? I asked flat. Are you sick? I'm embarrassed, he snapped. Because of you. You just stood there. You let it happen. Everything went to hell. You need to fix this. Say it was a joke. Say Mom didn't mean it like that. You know how she is. You want me to lie? I said. After everything she said? After you sat there and laughed and filmed it? I wasn't laughing, he started. You were. And you didn't say a damn thing. Just like you didn't say anything all those other times, when she criticized how I cleaned, how I cooked, how I dressed. When she wandered into our bedroom uninvited. When I begged you to stand up for me. You stayed quiet, Daniel. There was a pause on the line, long and heavy. Let's just talk, he said finally in that tired, reasonable tone he used when trying to sound like the grown-up in the room. It was one night. One awkward speech. That's not a reason to burn it all down. We're a family. Not anymore, I said. I'm filing for divorce. More silence. Then, barely above a whisper. Don't do this over one thing, Elizabeth. It's not one thing. It's everything. That night was just the last straw. He tried again. What about everything good? The memories? The trips? The laughs? I remember them. I'm grateful for them. But a marriage isn't made of memories, it's made of respect. Partnership. You gave me neither. I hung up. My hands didn't shake. I didn't cry. Just stared at the screen as another message popped up. Then another. Then one from his friend. You held it together for so long. Proud of you. I didn't reply to any of them. Around 3 p.m., I went outside for the first time. The air was cold but fresh. A few blocks down, one of my elderly neighbors, Mrs. Dawson, caught my arm gently. I saw the video, she said softly. I always knew that woman had a cruel streak. You were brave, dear. Took real guts. You'll be fine. I smiled, thanked her, and kept walking. I ended up in a little coffee shop on the corner, the one with bad muffins and perfect windows. I ordered a latte and sat alone, watching the world go by. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something surprising. Relief. Like I'd been carrying a backpack full of bricks, and suddenly realized I could set it down. That night, my mom came over. She brought groceries and leftovers, and insisted on sleeping on the pull-out couch. While she made pasta, I told her everything. About Daniel's call. About the messages. About my decision. You sure? She asked gently. I nodded. I don't hate him. I'm just done lying to myself. We ate in near silence, clinking forks and exchanging half-smiles. Later, in pajamas curled on the couch, she put an arm around me. I'm proud of you, she whispered. You're not just smart. You're strong. So strong. The next morning, I woke up early. Made coffee. Sat down with my laptop. I wrote a to-do list. Call a divorce attorney, get advice on asset division, plan the move. I called it the Freedom List. By midday, Daniel called again. I didn't pick up. A minute later, a text appeared. Please, just talk to me. It doesn't have to end like this. I stared at the screen, then turned off my phone. He already had his chances. 2 years worth. And if someone can't hear your voice when you're crying, they don't deserve to hear it when you finally say goodbye. Sometimes survival is simple. You just close the door and never open it again. At exactly 11:15 the next morning, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, but I knew who it had to be. I was still in my pajamas, holding a cup of coffee, frozen in place. The second ring came a little louder, a little more insistent. I set the cup in the sink, ran a hand through my hair, and walked slowly to the door. Jean stood on the doorstep. No makeup, an understated coat, dark circles under her eyes. She still held herself with dignity, but the usual frostiness, the armor, was gone. It was like someone had peeled away the last layer of performance, and what remained was just a woman who'd lost control of the story. Can we talk? She asked. Her voice was flat, not soft, controlled. I nodded and stepped aside. She walked in like a stranger. No sweeping glances around the house. No assessing the curtains or checking for dust. She sat on the edge of the couch and clasped her hands together in her lap like someone waiting for bad news. I'm not going to apologize, she began. But I need you to understand. That night, it was a misunderstanding. A joke. Maybe in poor taste. I thought people would laugh. I didn't expect your mother to say what she said. About us. I stayed by the window, arms crossed. She pressed on. George and we've had a hard time. You know how business is. It's always a risk. But we managed. We always managed. Until now. And now everyone knows. They're calling, texting. We may have to move. We're looking at apartments. Smaller ones. She didn't say the word money, but it hovered between us like a fourth person in the room. Did you ever think this might be the consequence of your own behavior? I asked. Calm. Even. You spent 2 years belittling me. Walking into our house uninvited. Critiquing how I cleaned, cooked, dressed. You called me simple like it was a diagnosis. Jean straightened. I wanted you to be better, she said sharply. To fit in. You said yourself that you respected tradition. I thought you wanted to belong to this family. I never asked for your lessons, I replied. I stepped closer. That wasn't kindness. That was control. You wanted to remind me every day that I didn't belong. She stood suddenly, pacing now. Then she returned to her purse, pulled out an envelope, and placed it on the coffee table. A check, she said. It's not much. Just a gesture. I know things were difficult. This isn't official. It's human. I looked at the envelope. Didn't touch it. You're offering me money you don't even have, I said. Jean, the funds you and George live on, the ones funneled through Daniel, come from me. From my mother. That money is already ours. And now you want to use it to buy my silence. Her face flushed. That's not true. Those are our savings. You don't know what we've sacrificed. You're right, I said. I don't. But I do know you never sacrificed anything for me. Not once. And now, still, you're thinking only about yourself. Silence fell. Jean clutched the strap of her purse. Fine. I didn't come for that. I just want you to say it was a mistake. Publicly. In the group chats. On social media. Wherever. People think we're scammers. But you were, I said quietly. You pretended. You built your image on our backs. You mocked my background while you survived off of it. Jean turned away, eyes flicking toward the window. I'm sorry it went down like this, she said. Her voice had dropped. But you're blowing up your marriage. Divorce isn't strength, Elizabeth. It's weakness. No, I said. Weakness is letting you keep writing the script. Strength is finally saying enough. She looked at me. Do you even love my son? I did. Until he became your echo. Until he started dismissing my feelings as overreactions. Until he traded our intimacy for your approval. She wobbled slightly and sat back down. He doesn't know what to do. He thought things would settle. He loves you. Love is a verb, I said. It's not just a feeling, it's a choice. He made his. I'm making mine. We sat in that tension for what felt like forever. Eventually she rose. Stepped toward the door. Then paused. I always wanted the best for him. You know that. And I just wanted respect, I said. But you never thought I deserved it. She gave a stiff nod and walked out. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't look back. The door clicked shut behind her. And for the first time in weeks I breathed, deep and steady. It felt like the clouds had finally cleared. Not happiness exactly. But clarity. Peace. The kind you get after a hurricane, when the air smells clean and the silence feels like forgiveness. And from that moment on I knew. I wasn't going back. I filed for divorce on a Tuesday morning. It wasn't a rash decision. I knew I was going to do it the night Jean raised that glass and called me the daughter of a cleaning lady, and Daniel laughed while recording it. I just needed a few days to gather the paperwork, print the forms, make copies. When I finally signed, I didn't even shake. It felt like stepping out of a long, dark tunnel and into sunlight. A few hours later, Daniel started calling. I didn't pick up. Then came the texts. At first they were calm, almost professional. We should talk. Let's not make this worse. We owe it to ourselves to at least discuss this. Then the edge crept in. You're overreacting. It was one comment. You're destroying everything. I didn't answer any of them. He knew where I lived. A part of me expected him to show up. He didn't. Instead, I moved into a small studio closer to downtown Seattle. It had a balcony, wood floors, and big windows that let in all the light. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. I didn't bring much, just clothes, my laptop, a couple of boxes of books. I bought new linens. I wanted a bed untouched by memory. The apartment smelled like wood and fresh coffee. I played music every morning, opened the windows, and slowly started to feel like myself again. Sometimes I dreamed about Daniel. In those dreams, he wasn't angry, just distant. Like someone I used to know. Like a guest I was too polite to ask to leave. I'd wake up and feel a quiet relief. I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry. I was just free. The birthday incident faded from the rumor mill sooner than I expected. People gossiped for a week or two, then moved on. Someone else's divorce, someone's job loss, a scandal at a corporate party. Life had plenty of drama to keep the cycle going. But something had shifted. Daniel's friends, the ones who used to fawn over Jean and her endless stories of old money, started drifting away. Jean and George did move, just like she said they would. I heard through mutual acquaintances that they ended up in a modest condo on the north side. No gated community, no marble countertops, no household staff. Just them, their silence, and their disappointment. Their old house went on the market. I found the listing by accident one afternoon. Recognized the kitchen from the photos. The same kitchen where Jean once told me I cut vegetables, like someone who's never seen a chef's knife. A few mutuals unfollowed them on social media. I noticed. Not out of spite, just curiosity. It was like watching a character unravel in a novel. One you never liked but still needed closure from. One day, I got a message from Amber, Daniel's childhood friend. We were never close, but she always greeted me kindly at gatherings. Her message was short. You were right. You always were. I hope you're happy now. I didn't respond. But I smiled. At first, I feared being alone. Not the loneliness itself, but the lack of routine. No shared dinners, no weekend plans to discuss. No someone to come home to. But what I found wasn't fear. It was space. Glorious, beautiful space. I signed up for a sunrise yoga class. I started walking in the park with a thermos of coffee, just to breathe. I talked to my mom every day. Sarah, my mom, became my anchor. We hadn't been this close since I was a teenager. She told me stories I'd never heard. How she got her first contract cleaning government buildings. How terrified she was when a hotel chain asked her to bid for their properties. I almost said no, she laughed. I thought I wasn't good enough. Then I said, to hell with it. If not me, then who? We baked together, laughed over tea, swapped cleaning hacks. She showed me how to get streak-free windows, and somehow, when she did it, it felt like love, not judgment. Not like Jean. Sometimes I wondered, what if Jean had kept her mouth shut that night? What if she'd raised a generic glass and said something forgettable? Would I have stayed? Would I still be pretending everything was fine? Maybe. Probably. I needed that slap in the face to finally see the whole picture. To admit to myself that I had been shrinking for 2 years, slowly disappearing into a version of myself molded by someone else's expectations. Now, I spent my weekends at flea markets, buying secondhand frames, colorful dishes, old books. My apartment didn't look like a catalog anymore. It looked like me. A little cluttered. Bright. Alive. One evening, I sat on my balcony with a glass of red wine, watching the city lights blink on one by one. My phone was silent. A whole week had passed without a single message from Daniel. Maybe he finally got it. Maybe he stopped fighting. I didn't care. There was no anger left. Just a sense of calm. Of closure. That rare moment in life when you know, without a flicker of doubt, that you made the right call. And then one Monday morning, I woke up with a strange feeling. Not dread. Not regret. Something else. The urge to begin again. For real this time. With a clean slate. A new name. A new story. A new me. Sometimes to build the life you want, you have to burn the old one to the ground. And I didn't regret a single spark. The divorce was finalized quickly. Only Daniel showed up to the hearing, stoic, distant, dressed in a dark suit that probably hadn't been worn since our engagement party. His face was unreadable, his eyes hollow. I watched him from across the courtroom and tried to reconcile this man with the one I had once trusted with everything. Once, he felt like the safest place I knew. Now, he was just a stranger waiting for the end of a business transaction. We divided the little we had, a joint bank account, an old sofa, the coffee maker I never liked. No fighting. No shouting. No long, emotional monologues. We signed the papers, shook hands with our lawyers, and that was it. Just like that, we weren't married anymore. Outside the courthouse, I stood on the stone steps and inhaled deeply. The Seattle morning was cool and misty, the sky a watercolor gray. I closed my eyes, tilted my head to the sky, and let the moment settle in my bones. It was over. Or maybe it was just beginning. The first few days post-divorce were oddly quiet. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't even celebrate. There was just silence. Not the eerie kind. The kind that follows when the noise dies down and you can finally hear your own breath. I threw myself into routine. Early mornings. Clean food. Focused work. Evening calls with my mom. Sarah was my lighthouse. She'd call and say, "What are we cooking tonight, chef?" And I'd laugh, feeling 10 years younger. We found joy in small things: roasted vegetables, music from her youth, the way she still used paper calendars. She reminded me that life wasn't meant to be polished. It was meant to be lived. What surprised me most was how quickly I stopped caring about what people thought. I used to spend hours replaying conversations in my head, worrying I sounded too blunt or not accommodating enough. Now, I wore what I liked, ate what I liked, went to sleep when I wanted. There was a joy in being ungoverned. I ran into a few people from Daniel's circle. Some offered half smiles, half pity. Some avoided eye contact. I didn't care. I owed no one an explanation. The scandal of the birthday toast faded, replaced by newer gossip. A failed engagement, a DUI, someone's affair with a Pilates instructor. Human attention spans are mercifully short. Daniel never called. Never emailed. The last thing he sent was a text that read, "I guess this is it. Sorry it turned out like this." I stared at the screen for a moment, then hit delete. Not out of anger. Just closure. Most mornings, I sat by the window with coffee in hand, watching the city wake up. Seattle in the early hours felt personal, like a secret between me and the skyline. I'd wrap myself in a blanket and just sit, letting the air move through me. This wasn't loneliness. This was peace. Would I fall in love again? Maybe. Maybe not. But I knew one thing for sure. I'd never again settle for someone who needed me to shrink so they could feel tall. Love isn't sacrifice. It's not endurance. It's choice. And I chose myself. My friends started to notice. "You're glowing," Laura said one afternoon over lunch. "You walk like someone who's finally walking their own path." I had changed. I was softer in some ways, harder in others. More opinionated. Less apologetic. I said no more often. I smiled more freely. I didn't bend myself into shapes I didn't recognize. I had come home to myself. Some evenings I'd light a candle, pour a glass of wine, and sit on the balcony as the city pulsed below. I wasn't waiting for anything. Not a text. Not a knock. Not an apology. I was just living. One night, as rain drizzled lightly on the railing, I whispered to the wind, "Thank you. For all of it." Because the pain had taught me to pay attention. The disappointment had taught me to trust my gut. And the end had taught me to begin. When I look back now, I don't see a failed marriage. I see a woman who learned, who stood up, who walked away, not because she was weak, but because she finally knew her worth. I no longer lived for someone else's approval. I didn't perform, didn't please, didn't pretend. I was enough. I am enough. And on one quiet Sunday morning, as I watched steam curl from my coffee mug, I smiled to myself. Not lonely, just free. If you've listened this far, it means the story touched you. Thank you for being here. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. I've got plenty more stories to share. And yes, don't forget to hit that like button. It helps me keep going.